everybody, it's Heather, the Butterfly Effect, plant-based extreme weight loss, and I have a real treat for you today. I have a friend that I want you to meet. This is Paula, and
Hi everyone.
Paula is a really incredible person, and she has a very inspiring story, and so she has agreed graciously to let me interview her so that I can share her story with all of you, because she's really cool, and I know you love to meet people who have been successful and are doing great on this lifestyle. And wait till you hear Paula's story. So Paula, the first thing I want everybody to know about you is what a successful businesswoman you are, and you're living your dream to be a designer.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your career and just what you're doing these days?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Paula and I live in Canada. I live in the prairies and I own Kelmscott Designs. I'm a needlework designer and I've owned the business. Well, I started the business and I've owned it for 14 years, and I design scissors, needlework tools, and all sorts of fun things. It always feels like play every day.
Oh, that's so cool. And one thing that I also love about Paula is she has given opportunities to a lot of artists and a lot of designers, and letting them make a living living their dreams too.
Yeah, I have a few designers that I distribute for, and they all do patterns and design beautiful, beautiful pieces. So yeah, I'm very honored to distribute for them.
That is so cool. So right now you really do have an incredible story. The reason I wanted to tell you about Paula is she is a lot smaller than she once was. Paula, how much weight have you taken off so far?
So I'm at 150 pounds off.
Wow, 150, like completely off. And how did you do that?
So I found the Whole Foods plant-based, no oil, sugar, or salt way of eating, and it's delicious.
That is so cool. And so I know at the time that you found the Whole Foods plant-based, no oil, all that good stuff, where were you and what was going on in your life?
Right. Okay, so that's about October 2015. Actually, the middle of September of 2015, I ended up in the hospital on what I just thought was a flu that wasn't going away, and was rushed in by ambulance. And after a few days, the cardiologist said to me that they thought maybe they had figured out what was wrong with me, but he was overweight, and he just sort of kindly said to me, you know, you're not long on this planet if you continue to eat this way. And so that's sort of where I guess it started, the stress of you know, having had this happen to me. And while I was in the hospital, I realized as I was walking around the cardiology ward that there were over half of the people on the ward that were just skin and bones trim, what I assumed were extremely healthy people, and they were walking around with their hands like this because their chests were full of packing because they had had heart bypass surgery. And I remember that, so I understood, okay, I know why I ended up here, and I felt such shame about it, but I thought, why are all these slim, trim people here? And I was there for a week, and when I left, they handed me a pamphlet on what was supposed to be the heart healthy diet for Canada, and I had flipped through it already, and I'm not saying that we were eating properly or even healthfully, but we had certainly made some improvements, and what they had handed us was just worse than the way we were eating. I guess I felt I just couldn't see going back to eating like that. So I stressed from the middle of September until October 4th. That date is just written in stone for me. And it was at that date that I Googled and found out about Whole Foods plant-based. I originally came to this from an incredible book that I just owe the doctor so much. It's called Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease by Caldwell, Esselstyn.
Yes.
And I read it in a matter of hours, and my husband happened to be out of the house. It's just my husband and I. And when he came back at about 3:30, I told him what I was going to do, and he's a real sweetheart, but he sort of rolled his eyes and thought, okay, great, another diet, because I started to gain weight when I was 9 years old. I have used food to soothe myself and to handle stress and just any circumstance you can think of, good or bad. I just used food and it became my addiction. And while it saved my life, the weight just went on horribly, and I was an extremely obese, unhappy person. So that's sort of where my story started.
That's great. And so, when you told your husband that you were going to be going on a plant-based diet, how did he react? Did he say, "Hey, let me join you," or did he say, "Paula's gone mad"?
So he's a really supportive person. I am so lucky to have met him. He is definitely the better half, but he is definitely a person that, boy, if we went to a buffet and there was bacon, his plate was full of it. He loved bacon and cheese, and he loves desserts, pie, things like that. And so he certainly was very, his usual way is to be very loving and considerate, but he just sort of thought, okay, great, is this going to be another situation where we clean the house out of all this type of food and bring in this type of food, and then a week later, because as anyone who knows who is obese, it is so hard to stick to any diet. And so I asked him if he could read the book. And the reason I wanted to read the book, or wanted him to read the book, is as I was reading Dr. Esselstyn's book, in there was information about cholesterol. And my husband is really slim and trim. He's like the people I had seen in the hospital. And in fact, he's a natural runner. But the past 3 years, when we would go for our annual physical, the doctor would look at him and be very concerned about his cholesterol and tell him it was extremely high. And in reading this book, I found this information that I thought, gee, maybe applied to him. So I had him read the book, and when I said to him, just please read the book so that you know what I'm going to do, because I am going to do this, and I will die doing this. It's just the last time, it's got to work. So he read it, and then he was convinced. The parts in there that Dr. Esselstyn talks about cholesterol just hit home for him. So anyhow, that's where our journey started.
That's great. And I think that's great advice for anybody who doesn't have a supportive spouse, or who doesn't eat, their spouse doesn't eat this way. It can make it so much more challenging for you,
Definitely.
if they're bringing in, what's that kind of non-compliant food?
Yeah, sad food is what we call it. Yeah.
Standard American diet, it is very sad.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's a great idea. Just say, hey, I'm not trying to change you, but here's something that I've read. This is what I'm going to be doing. And I'm sure in the back of his mind, he's thinking, this is going to be like all the other things, and it'll last maybe a month tops. What kinds of other weight reduction diets or plans have you tried?
From such a young age, most of it was, of course, low calories. And I showed Heather, I don't have many photos of myself because I'm not into having photos taken. I have so much shame, or had so much shame around my body. I showed Heather a picture yesterday that's actually on my Facebook.
Beautiful.
And I was 16 years old, and we had been, my mother and I had both been on less than 800 calories, and I think I even wrote in the post that I think I was this size for about 2.5 seconds because we were just starving. I was put on diet pills, and then there's Weight Watchers. I remember when Oprah did her liquid fast thing, there was a Canadian one, and I did that. Body for Life. I'm not sure if you want me to name them all, but oh my goodness, any and every diet, high carb, I mean, you know, low fat, on and on and on, but never ever had I heard of something like this.
I can totally relate. I just think about, I remember a deal a meal, and I did tops, and I did Weight Watchers,
Yeah.
and just about anything, because what's it like when you've got that extra weight on your body? Like, what does that do to your mental health? Did you have any physical problems from that?
Right. So, you know, I was definitely a person where there were people older than me, i.e. my parents or my aunts, uncles, things like that. There were a lot of overweight people in my family, but there seemed to be a huge focus, as often people do, rather when they know they have a problem, they tend to focus on maybe the weaker link or someone younger. Sometimes they even focus on that person out of love, which I think maybe some of that was where, you know, there were aunts or uncles or things like that just hoping that I wasn't going to end up with a weight problem when they could start to see me have one. And so, you know, there was just a lot of focus. And then with that, unfortunately, comes a lot of shame. And you know, then there was even, I mean, I grew up, I'm 57, so I graduated in 77, and so there were a lot of men that still thought it was all right to make comments about your body or things like that. You know, oh, you're so beautiful, if only you weren't fat, or different comments like that. And so you just grow up very self-conscious. You just can't figure out why. You know intellectually what you need to eat, and you're so successful and intelligent and things like that. Why can I not just eat this list of foods, even foods that I actually really like? Why can't I eat it? And so you just develop a huge addiction, a huge body of shame is what grows out of it.
Yeah, I so relate to that. I used to think that, like, if I'm so smart in other areas of my life, why is this, like, thing? Why can other people do it and I can't do it? So when you started eating your health promoting food, it's a diet in the way that a dog eats a dog's diet, and a guinea pig eats a guinea pig's diet, and a hummingbird eats, but we're not having that diet mentality, right? This isn't for a short period of time until I get thin, and then I'm just going to go back to eating how I was eating, right? That's what I think of when the diet. So once you started eating a health promoting diet, how long did it take you to get off 150 pounds? That had to feel incredible.
Right. So, I guess just to sort of go back a little bit, the next morning, that happened to be a Sunday, the next morning, we happen to live in a very small little town, 350 people. We do have a grocery store, but I went down and I figured that there were maybe one or two things that I could make and eat for each meal until we could get to the larger city to get groceries. And so I have to say that the first 2 weeks were really rough, and I sort of walked the floor and panicked a bit and tried to learn more and more. But I did find, I did not keep a record, perhaps I should have, of, oh, this week I lost this much or things like that. But the weight started to come off pretty fast. And after that first 2 weeks of staying so compliant, which is a word we use in our way of eating, I all of a sudden realized, because as I mentioned, there were foods, vegetables and potatoes and salads and things like that, homemade soup. I really did enjoy that. I just didn't eat it. And all of a sudden, it started to taste so amazing. And so the weight just started to come off, and it felt like every 6 weeks I was having to go and buy what I sort of termed cheaper clothes, because I would need a new size of clothing. So yeah, it tumbled along. So I think this is about the 18th month and 150 pounds gone.
That's crazy good, isn't that, you guys? And so I want to pull out another gem, couple things that I heard there. One is that it really didn't take that long for you to neuroadapt. So neuroadaptation is when your palate changes and food that is healthier starts to taste better to you. So if you are in that point where, you know, you're being compliant but you're not enjoying your food yet, give it a little time, because it is kind of amazing
Right.
when that happens,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, write a list of everything that you love that is the type of foods that we eat. Write a list of what you love, because if you're going to change to eat this way, and it will be a struggle to detox, as they call it, then make sure that you have foods that you love, and then slowly but surely there will be a day where you'll eat this food, and then maybe the next day or 2 days later you'll eat it. And I mean, the very first time we realized this, we were eating baked fries. We'd already had them a few times and they just tasted so amazing. And so yes, it just happens. All of a sudden you have gotten rid of all of the horrible, sad food you've been eating, and your body has detoxed out of all the addictive foods, and all of a sudden there's just so much delicious food that you can eat.
And another thing, I also hear sometimes people say, I'm the only person who eats this way in my town, or you don't understand what it's like. I'm surrounded by meat and cheese and bacon and everything like that. So is that a good excuse, Paula? What's it like where you live?
So you have to know, I was born in Saskatchewan, and I absolutely love where I was born, and we feel so lucky to live there. But we are the breadbasket of the world, and we live right in the middle of cattle country. I mean, people make their living raising animals and meat, poultry, and things like that. They hunt and all sorts of things. They eat dairy and cheese and just on and on. That's what they do there. And I'm right in the middle of that. I mean, there's an abundance of that, that's for sure.
So you're not exactly among many plant-based eaters with lots of support for your lifestyle.
I have a better relationship with those herbivore cows than I do with the people in my town, because, you know, if there's a pizza listed, it's always, anything that's listed, it's going to have meat or oil or dairy or salt or sugar, lots of cream, fat. Yeah.
So, you know, kind of, if she can do it, you guys, she doesn't live like right next door to a Whole Foods and a Trader Joe's. She has to drive, like 2 hours to even get to
Our largest city is 2 hours away, and the city that, it does have good grocery stores, but the other city is 1 hour and 15 minutes away. So yeah, I mean, our little local grocery store, it's great, of course, because it is more remote. It's more canned goods or things like that. But if we want great fresh produce, then once a week we either go to the, I guess, smaller city, which is 1 hour and 15 minutes away, or to the larger city, 2 hours.
Wow.
So yeah.
So there
Lots
goes
of
your
planning.
excuse about about that. And I have a question for you. So do you just spend your time thinking about all the food you can't eat, or has it just become normal now?
Right. So I will say, before this, I was just obsessed with food, as a lot of food addicts are. I mean, we chose vacations based on the food we could eat there. If, you know, we're taping this about the time Easter's about to come, we would be making plans. What are we going to do for Easter Sunday? And whether I was going to cook in the house or whether we were going to go out, there was a long list of unhealthy foods. And I just thought about food all the time. I mean, just every minute. I was just obsessed with it. And as soon as I ate enough food to feel full, there was sort of a reaction. For a chronic binge disorder person, you often want to eat and you don't listen to your stomach, and you eat so that you almost feel like, oh, I'm full to here. You're never satisfied, but you feel like you're full to here, and you just wait for that to go away so that you can fill back up. And so, yeah, that's how we used to live. I mean, and even my husband, he just didn't happen to gain the weight. I'm not sure whether it's because he had more muscle mass, his genetics. He does still run a bit or what, but, you know, my husband, he certainly agrees. He's had as big a food addiction as I did.
So where do you get your support? Do you get it online, or how? And can you talk about like some service work that you're doing too? Because you didn't just like heal yourself and say, okay, I'm good now.
Right. So again, living very remote, and I knew even when I just read the book that there was a very good chance. I didn't even know if there was someone in my town that was vegetarian, let alone what I sort of call myself a starchavore. I didn't think there would be anyone like that, and so I did turn to social media, and I'm very grateful that it's there. I'm certainly grateful that it's there as a designer owning my own company. And I happened upon Heather's group, and so I joined it. And that's how I found her. And then I found that there were other groups and other people. And
And you actually moderate and help newbies that that are just starting, like on the McDougall program.
right.
And stuff
So I'm not sure moderate, but I certainly mentor. So one thing that I did do, I also, I guess I haven't mentioned that. So the first book was Esselstyn's book. But I actually remembered from years ago about John McDougall, who has written many books, and he is certainly thinks of this way of eating, but he is very pro-starch. And so he has the starch solution, McDougall's weight loss. His wife, they're a team, and she was a surgical nurse, he was a doctor, and she has Mary's Minis and things like that. And there was a plethora of that information on social media, and I joined a group, got a mentor from the group, which is something I know a lot of people don't talk about this, but I sort of knew that I was the type of person, when I have an issue, I go and I either research or I look to people who have had that experience. And after a few days being on one of the McDougall groups, I found a person that I'll call her Joanne. She loves to mentor me, and she's so supportive, but she would call herself a reluctant mentor. She feels that she won't take any hand, I guess, in how she has helped me get here. But I really feel people need mentors, because sometimes groups are fantastic, but sometimes you might just have that, I don't know, middle of the night crisis. Not that I really had that, but there were once or twice I wanted to pick up the phone or just wanted some one-on-one talk or things like that. I chose a person that was strict. She is textbook strict, and she has been doing this for years and years. So now that I've maybe got about 40 pounds left, and so I am at the point where now I am reaching out and mentoring other people to just give back. I mean, at no time did Joanne ever ask for any money or anything like that. She was just always there. And so there was that. But then in Heather's group, I very quickly found that there was a lot of support. And Heather has a podcast that we're watching, but she has episode 2. Very early on, that was in that first 2 weeks, where I was, the books, Esselstyn's book, and he has a lot of videos and things like that online, which are fantastic to watch. And it's quite graphic. And while I was not that sick, I guess is the word, or, physically, my body wasn't that bad physically, my heart, I was very, very panicked about it. And Heather has episode 2 called Finding Your Why. Yep. And I made contact with Heather after I joined the group, and I sent her a couple of private messages, and she sent them to me, and I watched that. And to this day, I still have that in a little tiny notebook. I carry it with me. I'll be honest, I haven't had to read it over since, for quite a few weeks, but I have from time to time just looked at that and realized that whole exercise, I just strongly, if you do nothing else, just go and do that exercise. Even if you don't change the food, go and do that exercise. It's about finding your why. And for me, the why is, if I continue to eat this way, if I don't eat 100% compliant, healthy diet, what will happen to me? And for me, I just knew in my heart of heart, I will die. And so Heather sort of takes you through things, and you can make notes and things like that. And then if you hang on to that, and if you're ever feeling tempted or thinking, oh, I can just have a little bit of this or things like that, you have those notes to go and read, or you can go back and watch the episode.
That is so wonderful. I am just crazy proud of you, and I just think you're doing wonderful things. And why Paula is with me today is she's actually a wonderful business coach, and she's helping me get my stuff together so that I can be more effective and help more people and reach more people. And this weekend I've just been like buzzing with excitement and so many great ideas and so much great advice, and I just love this woman. So if you I know she does not need any more business, this woman works a lot of hours, but if you need a really wonderful business coach for really any kind of a business that you want to get started, or
I mean, Heather clearly has already done some amazing work, both personally, as we know, but then also reaching out to other people and helping them. And she is near, like me, she's got just a few pounds left, and she's had amazing success, and she loves to interact with people and get her message out. It's very clear that Heather's wish on this planet is to heal anybody and everybody who is dying from eating incorrectly. And so I had sort of picked up on that, and Heather had disclosed to our group that she's been writing this book, and I thought that was so fantastic. So yes, since 1999 I've had a business brainstorming coaching business, and I do have a lot of clients, one-on-one clients. And so I reached out to Heather because, again, she will not take any credit for it. She's just like my mentor, but she did. She saved my life. In that first 2-week period that I'm talking about, I was just so sweating so badly from so much stress and so emotional. She told me about that episode. I went and did it, and something just came over me. And then, of course, that's about the time the food started tasting really good too, and the cravings and the detoxing was finished. And a calm just came over me, and I just knew I could do it. And I've had this eating disorder for 47 years, and it's gone. And that's another huge thing I hope it's okay to take a couple of minutes to talk about, is, I remember really clearly I'd been sent to a church camp for a week, and they sort of limited food, and I had never grown up that way. It was just my brother and I. There was always a plethora of food, good food, but a plethora of food. And at the church camp, they didn't serve meat and potatoes at every meal, and you were limited on, everyone got half a glass of milk once a day and things like that. And something along with all the stress and different things growing up just clicked in, and I just seemed to focus on food. And when I left the camp, it just immediately, I remember getting home and just piling the food in my mouth, and that's when that all started. So for 47 years I have had an uncontrollable eating disorder, and it is gone. I mean, I just feel so lucky about that. I know. And I mean, boy, I sometimes feel that's a missing message. And I know Heather talks about it a little bit, but so often it's about, you were eating this way, now you should eat this way. And yet there's a lot of people who were eating this way that have an eating disorder. It's just like you say to a person, you're an alcoholic, you're drinking too much, now you shouldn't drink anymore. And yet there's actually some steps in between there and things that should happen. So if you are a person that feels that you have chronic binge disorder, trust me, try and give this a try. Try and go 100% compliant for maybe a month or something like that. If you can get all the cheese and oil and the meat and the addictive foods out of your diet and detox, then you can get through the chronic binge disorder. And now I have control over food. I'm not intimidated about it. I know what I want to eat. It's delicious and it's fantastic.
You travel a lot too. Sorry, I was just going to say.
Yeah, well, the other thing I did want to mention is sometimes I belong to a couple of fantastic groups, but sometimes we do get people who say, oh, I would love to eat that way. I just can't because it involves so much scratch cooking. I own my own business and I work 100 hours a week, and it feels like fun all the time, but it's a lot of time, and I can do it. And I live in a remote location, so I can't just pick up every single day and walk into, say, Whole Foods or a place like that I know is going to have a lovely salad bar and grab my food for the day. I have to scratch cook. And again, just like you would, if a crisis happens to you and you own a business and you need to fit that now into your schedule, you will figure it out. And I knew that I needed to do that. For me, maybe I take a little bit of time in the middle of the day because we tend to eat our larger meal at noon. And so I tend to scratch cook then. But then once a week, after we've done our big grocery shopping, I usually have in mind what I'm going to eat for the week that will help make things faster. Because some days, if I have a new release coming out, if I've got a customer that's forgotten to place their order, things like that, I was mentioning some of those situations to Heather yesterday. There is no way I will ever go down to, we just have a couple of very tiny restaurants anyhow, but they don't have anything that I can eat, and I am never going to be able to go down and order. So it's incumbent upon me. So I make spaghetti sauce from scratch, a soup from scratch, things like that, so that if maybe I've only got about 15 minutes, I can get something in the pot made up and I can eat it. And so, yes, will you have to change your lifestyle? Well, I've never met anybody who has overcome a problem that hasn't had to have some change. And as humans, we don't like change. But you are going to have some change in your life. And just figure out in really tiny steps what you can do to bring that into your life. But I will not buy from anybody that they can't do this because it requires scratch cooking. You can chop up potatoes and throw them in the oven for baked fries. You can do up a stir fry. You can make, a whole bunch of rice in advance and freeze it. You can make spaghetti sauce. You can do soup. Things like that. It is possible.
And I think, if Paula can do it with her time constraints and where she lives and all the travel that you do, I love that you don't accommodate any excuses.
No.
This is what you wanted, and so she was willing to do what it took to make this happen, and 150 pounds gone. I am so happy for you. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for agreeing. I know you're a private person,
yeah, this is the first time I've ever been on a podcast. I probably only have about 4 photographs of myself.